Uh, a very good evening to one and all present here. Today we are gathered here to discuss a very important matter about in these times the nation has been facing a lot of problems, and in this pandemic also the ministries have been working, the government has been working, and a lot of things have been done. Today we have with us Mr. Naveen Bali, Dr. Naveen Bali from the Ministry of Finance, and he'll be talking to us about the work of the ministry, particularly related to the Economic Survey of India. Uh, Over to you, Raka ma'am, to deliver the welcome speech, and then we can move on to Naveen sir.
Okay, thank you so much, Nipun, and a very good evening to all of you. As Nipun has told me that the theme is governance in uncertainty, I think this is what we was just discussing. I was discussing with Naveen that initially we all were taken by surprise, and the surprise was not the happy one. It was very full of concerns and uncertainty, meaning to go in which direction we may lead. And after imbibing the initial shocks, um, especially India has emerged as a winner because, and of course, we can say that able leadership of ours, which is we are having these days, has pulled us out of this particular quagmire of COVID-19 situation. Though still we are still finding certain points to iron out, but I think largely we have been out of this situation. So this we know that, and the fantastic piece of governance we have seen that India is now has taken, advantage of this, or rather opportunity they have realized in this situation also, and has emerged as a winner, which is a big thing. We know that the primary concern was economic health of the country, that what will happen because a lot of people have lost their employment, and they were not in a position to take their care. Despite that, a lot of interventions have been made. So I think, and not only the leadership, but the leadership too has some supporting hands. Like we have today, we have a privilege to have Dr. Naveen Bali with us. So I would like to welcome him because, and I would like to give a small introduction of names. That's my students. That, as you might have heard when I was discussing with Dr. Naveen, that he is there with the ministry for last 3 years, and he is working in the capacity of consultant in the Office of Principal Economic Advisor of India, Department of Economic Affairs, which has done tremendous job in the finance. He has contributed 2 chapters each in the Economic Survey 2021 and 2018-19, namely process reforms, monetary management and financial intermediation, ending Maths Nyaya, how to ramp up capacity in the lower judiciary, and monetary management and financial intermediation IBC section. And I'm very glad to share with all of you that he belongs to our community as well, that is the teaching community. So before he has joined it, he was working as assistant professor at the Indian Institute of Corporate Affairs, Gurgaon, as head of the Center of Excellence for Sustainable Development, and was part of core faculty to the Graduate Insolvency Program in IICA. Presently, he is also part of core faculty for IIC Evaluation Certificate Program and courses held by International Business Value Association. He has also worked in the Research and Regulating Wing at Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of in India in 2017-18. Uh, Also, I would like to share because he has done so much hard work, and of course, this is actually enriched his experience. That he has taken his PhD degree in economics from the Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur, in June 2015. He has published a paper titled "Sustainable Performance: Oriented Production Practices in the Indian Iron and Steel Industry, an Empirical Investigation," in the Journal of Cleaner Production, July 2019. And during his PhD, he was also the recipient of a short stay fellowship program at Utrecht School of Economics, Utrecht University, the Netherlands, in 2008. And of course, he has participated in a number of seminars. Again, he is familiar with the econometrics package such as Strata, RStudio, eViews, and Frontier, and possess advanced knowledge of database packages provided by Center for Monitoring Indian Economy and Capitaline. I think perfect partner for Modi ji to work with. Huh? So with these words, I would like to welcome you, Naveen, and I would like to request you to start your address.
Thank you, Raka ma'am, for your warm welcome and brief introduction. So let's start this session. Basically, I'll divide this into two parts. Firstly, like already been mentioned by the student committee, saying that what kind of work we do in economic survey and what kind of thought goes into that. So let's start with that, and then I'll probably like to just give you one kind of small flavor on process reform, which is a chapter which I and my team has worked on. Basically, it's chapter number 6 of volume 1. So I'll just, while telling you all these things, we will, have some kind of flavor on what kind of thinking goes on to understand uncertainty. And this doesn't have to be only with the government; it has to be with your day-to-day life. And on the process, we'll find out that is there any role of legal, how legal having an efficient legal system in an economy can really help us. So let's start with that. So first of all, let me just start by saying that in the economic survey we have basically two volumes. So one is the first volume, which is more or less about the idea. Now, government is not have any obligation to follow that. Just like in budget, you have to. So that's kind of ideology which is there for us for the coming year. And the volume 2 is basically about all the snapshot, real hardcore data on the performance of the economy on various sectors. So basically what is going on is that around about, let's say around October or something, what we will do is that we'll start getting all these data and we start analyzing in a way that what kind of things are going good, what are going bad, and also we also listen to all the stakeholders. I mean, they are this government, I think, I'm not saying in a political way, but this is what I have felt. I have worked there. They give you enormous flexibility. You can just go and talk to CEA, chief economic advisor, anytime, or you can go to principal. My boss is Sanjeev Sanyal, so I can any day, anytime I can just go over and just can randomly say something that this is something going on. For example, if you look into the chapter, there's a thing talked about the voluntary liquidation. That if the Indian company is an Indian company which is abiding with law, has all the things correct, still it takes 1500 days to voluntarily liquidate. That's kind of a thing which comes into it, and we can discuss it and then eventually find out that okay, let's write something about this, let's highlight these points. And same way we have, of course, in this theme we have COVID was the all the limelight was on the COVID health sector and all these things. So all these areas, and then we have also had infrastructure where we have to, I'll discuss that as well, maybe in a brief in the later time. So all these kind of things are different things starts to come, and based on that there's we take a call that okay, we will actually want to focus on few of these areas, and that will go to the as a vision in the volume 1. So based on the hardcore data, we find out whatever the things are lacking or wherever things are not moving as per our vision, we like to put it on there. For example, last year it was on wealth creation, and in fact even before that it was on the new growth model, which I have also worked on. We'll discuss on that as well. So this is how we do our economic survey, and in this particular economic survey, I have basically worked with Sanjeev ji on chapter number 6, which is called process reforms. Now, I'll just like to, make it as not a more of economic thing, because my background is from economics. So I just want to make it very, very simple for you guys. So let's say what happens. So the thing goes like this. From our childhood, we are always told to not have risk, don't take risk, and if you're taking risk, you are going to be in trouble or something like that. We always have some kind of ways to prevent risk. The point here is that we always been told that risk is something that you should avoid. And this is in the literature, we say if you take risk, you can earn more. But in generality, in common life, we always are told that risk is a little bit bad thing. So we always have a probability of occurrence. And in the probability of occurrence, what we say is that if you do this, there are n number of outcomes. For example, if I want to cross a road and I want to just go very quickly, and there's a high probability that I may end up in a road accident. So those kind of things are already in our mind. So one of the thing is when we try to make any policy, we always think in this way, and even it is taught in our from 50, 60, this is the mentality which we say is that everything is predictable. This is kind of arrogance which we have as a humans, that if something goes bad, we will, after once this has gone bad, we always come back and say why it has happened, and then next time to make sure that this doesn't happen, we put some kind of regulation on that, right? So we think that the world is some kind of a set of outcomes, and all those outcomes have some kind of different probability of occurrence. So there is a probability that this may happen, there may be a possibility that this may go also happen. So good can happen, bad can happen, and it goes like this. Same is the case in stock markets. The problem with this is that we are taking care of risk, but not uncertainty. Now, what is uncertainty? Uncertainty is something which I don't even know, right? Tell me one moment, one person in this world who has predicted any of the financial crisis. Tell me one person who knows about this COVID pandemic or any other pandemic which has happened, SARS, everything has been there. Is there anybody in this world who has told beforehand that this is going to happen? No. Why? Because the challenges which comes, new challenges which come, nobody has even predicted about it. And when nobody has predicted about it, then there is virtually impossible for us to today tell that what will happen after 1 year, right? So one of the way is that, you know, there are so many, this world which we live in is very complex, and there is so much different complex interactions, which may seems to be insignificant, but at the end, they have a huge influence on your outcome, right? So take an example of a Frisbee, which is a very popular example. I'm just re-quoting it. So in this case of Frisbee, like if you have a dog and you take a Frisbee to the park, so generally we throw the Frisbee and the dogs goes and catch it. Now, if I'm an economist or I'm a decision maker, I know that, you know, everything will, if I put this much amount of force and this direction of the road and this is the curve of the Frisbee, and at the end, I'll predict that this will go to some place. So what I will do, I'll just take my dog and tie over there and throw the Frisbee from this side. So what will happen? Generally, you will still find that the Frisbee will not go to the dog. The right way to do is to throw, just give a broad direction to the dog that I'm going to throw a Frisbee on this, let's say this direction, and I throw it. The dog will going to slowly try to capture it, and eventually, you know, when if the Frisbee goes left, he will try to, you know, adjust to the left. If Frisbee go right, he'll go right, and then eventually there is more chance that he will catch that. So this is how you should, you know, use the data. So when you have data, you only have to observe the data, but you don't want to predict the data. The way in which most of the scientists and everybody are fascinated by saying what is the growth rate after 1 year and all, it doesn't make any sense, because everything cannot be predicted in the way you want, because there is a huge element of uncertainty. Some people may work very hard but may get bad marks because they got late in the class. So that kind of thing which he has not predicted is to be catered about. So this is the biggest thing, that the world under the uncertainty cannot have policies which will be out of the results of the predicted outcomes. And the predicted outcome is more or less like regulations. So what we do, regulation is something like a written contract. You already have this, if this happens, you have to do this. So it's like a very mechanical thing. The main way it should have been done is through having more of efficient supervision. So basically what you want is that you want to have a very simpler rules. You don't want to have much rules. Why we don't want to have much rules is, see, the thing is that what happens initially is that we try to, you know, take care of something and we make one regulation. Then again, something happens, then we make one more regulation. So over the time, these regulations start piling up. The very intent of having this regulation is because we thought that by having this regulation, we can reduce the discretion of the decision maker so that he cannot exploit the system. So there is a kind of regulation, so you have to accept. But over the time, what happens that these regulations keep piling up. And once they keep piling up, it actually makes the system more complex. It gives more power to the decision maker to choose whichever way he likes to do it. And that adds up to more opacity to the economy, to the system, and that also add additional uncertainty to the system. So what you want is not to have too many regulations. You want to have simpler regulations. Of course, you want to have regulations. You want to have law, but at the same time, you don't want to make it so complex that it is simply not understood by a person, and the guy who knows about it may have additional information to use it or exploit it according to the system. So that is one thing. So in this, I'll give you one small example where you will find that, in case of the great financial crisis of 2008. So immediately this was happened, and everybody understood that this was because of some problem in the subprime mortgage, investment thing. So they made over 800 regulations to make sure that this doesn't happen again. 800 is regulations. And what happens over the time is that, these regulations made the system so big that people who used to do business in normal way were not able to do it at all. And this is something you will find in India as well. So in India, there is one index which we have took the help of, which is called World Rule of Law Index. It's called WJP, which is World Justice Projects. Now, in this, we have taken one of the aspect of regulatory enforcement. So we find that in case of India, as far as due level of this course has to be, taken. So the due level of the course effectiveness is very, very, the due level of, administrative proceedings is, we are having a very good rank of 35. So that means that we are very good at following the process. The problem is the enforcement of it. When we talk about the enforcement, that rank goes back to 81, and this is out of 130 countries. So we are on the Q3. So this itself shows that, this problem is staying not only with this, not, something which is only with India. This is, you have seen in US. We have also seen in other countries like Australia, where you will find that, in fact, in 2006, the government got fed up with too many of the regulations, and they came up with some kind of, some kind of data on a report where they say that, just by having this too many regulations in the system, it actually makes up 25% of the time of the senior management, because they have to comply with this. And that is something which you can say is a wastage of time, and you could have had more GDP if you are not only complying to the registers like Babu's, but you are doing actual work which you are supposed to do, right? So this is something where you will find that a mere regulation making system mechanical will not work. Of course, this system is, the system means our economy and our whatever economic and legal system we have. It's not a dead system. It's not like a machinery. It's like an evolving biological system, just like you and me. So every time when it evolves, it needs new challenges. And take a case of IBC. How many times we have to amend it? It doesn't mean that the government doesn't, is not good enough. No, the thing is that this law will always going to evolve. And when it's going to evolve, you always have to, make it in a way that it caters to the market, because our intention to bring the financial creditor as, the flat owners as a financial creditor initially was to help them. But then we found that the creditor COC will have such a big issue of, transaction cost, and then we have to change it. So this is how you do it. So your intention was good, but at the end, the market has its own way. It's a very mysterious way which the decision maker may not have thought. So that is one thing. Apart from that, what we want to say is that, okay, so you will say that, theek hai, samajh gaye, theek hai, only regulation will not work. Supervision is something which Indians are not, we are not able to take care of. So then what to do? So we can, what kind of solutions we have if we are not able to do supervision? Now, supervision means that everything has to be dealt case by case. If there is you make some kind of set of rules, just like you take an example of basically cricket. So I'm not saying that umpire is not required, but umpires are required. But at the end, if there is a very, very close call of a direct hit, then you need to go to the, third umpire. So here what we want to say is that the rules should be very simple, that if you hit the ball, somebody catches, you're out. That's very simple. So you don't have to make 10 rules. Ki if you hit the ball on the leg side, there will be catch. If you hit on the off side, there will be catch. Both sides, you're out. So you don't say all this thing. You make it very simple. And when you make simple, then the whichever thing which is, not been solved by these simple rules, then it has to be on the supervisor to take an efficient call on that. Right. So that is one. So now other thing is that, okay, so how to take care of this supervision? So one of the alternative ways which has come up in the literature are the following. So first one is say that let's give it to some third party to do the supervision. Now, what kind of third parties we are talking about? For example, let's say credit rating agencies. Now, credit rating agency basically say that, look here, I'm going to give them the credit ratings. You don't worry about the banks. You don't worry about anything else, and we'll take care of it. But what you will find from credit rating, there's the biggest problem of credit. There are three problems in that. First is that who is going to fund these credit agencies? Now, if it is by the issuer or is it by the subscriber? See, at the end for credit agency, banks will become customers because they are the one who is financing them. So will they gonna give them the bad rating? No, not at all. Now take an example from the investor side. If the investors if they keep doing the low rating, no investor is going to come on board and do the investment. So in this, you will find there's a problem of, you know, incentivizing this credit rating agencies. Number two, even in these credit rating agencies, you will find is that they have some kind of algorithm for giving this credit agency, which is actually very non-transparent way. You cannot find it out. I have done work on actually on this sovereign ratings, and it was really it took me more than 4 months just to finalize the methodology of S&P index. So what you say is that this they have some kind of algorithm. So they will give some points, and accordingly it will get you a rating. A rating is best, rating is worst, 1 to 5 rating or whatever they will give. But again, this model is for what? For assessing the risk, right? Like CEA is told in the press conference that day, is that credit rating is basically telling you probability of your returns from a particular investment. So if a credit agency giving you rank 1, it means what? It means that this is the best, just go for it. So there is a high probability that you'll get returns from it. That's all, right? But even in this, I'm telling you, there is no way to find out what is the uncertainty, right? At model prediction, you can maximum predict what worse can go, but you cannot predict what you don't even know what can be a possible outcome. Like in case of COVID, nobody knew till October last year that there will be a COVID, and 1 year everybody will be sitting at home. No. So the credit agency at max can take care of your risk, but they cannot take care of your uncertainty. So then the third point is that even if, let's say, they have no problem of paying incentive, okay, we devise a system where they will be paid incentively and this not linked to the problem. We devise a problem where they can even take care of risk, but that uncertainty will never going to make them, you know, as a correct measure for your policy making. So you cannot say that particular country like India, which has a lower rating, is anyway worse than China. Today, you will see that all the foreign things are coming to us, but our credit agency rating is less than China. So it itself shows you that, you know, you cannot give your supervision to something like third party, right? So next, what is the next way of understanding this uncertainty and all these things? So another example, which another thing which has been given is that, you know, let's take as a measure. So koi measure bana lete hain. Let's make one measure. So measure can be anything. For example, let's take in the case of education. Now, if you say that education system is good, what you will say? So somebody will say, okay, let's say that there is no failure. If there is a high failure rate, then that means the teacher is bad. And if there is a good failure rate, good success rate, then teacher is good. Do you think that will work? I don't think so. Why? Because the teacher will never going to fail anybody. So this is something which was done by a Nobel laureate called this law called Oliver Hart law. So Oliver Hart law says that when the measure becomes the target ceases to exist, because people will start gaming the target, right? You understand that? Take an example of this doctor. How you want to pay this doctor? In UK, they have devised a thing called, okay, all those surgeons who have higher rate of surgery, you know, success rate of surgery, they will be paid higher. What is the consequence of that, guys? Simple. If I'm surgeon, I know this case is gone, I will never go for surgery. So what I'm trying to do is actually trying to discourage my efficient surgeons to go for surgeries for people who actually want them, right? And there are so many other things I'll tell you. One more thing I'll tell you is, in California, there was a law on basically this nursing law, and they were having over 5,000 regulations on nursing. Of course, any supervisor or any decision maker cannot recall all those 5,000 regulations. and this is documented. So what they used to do, they used to pick only 10 or 15 handful regulations, wohi yaad rehti hain, as much as you can remember, and they used to judge each and every person based on that. And then after some time, they will find out that all those regulations which was given in a way ki we will remove the discretion from the decision maker. They cannot, give any partiality in the system. But actually what was happening is that they were actually becoming hindrance to the growth of the health sector. So there are so many ways you will find out that, even this rule of making a target. If I say today that NLI Bhopal is one of the best, how you will make it one of the best? You will say, sir, we will have something this or that. It will never work. Because once you make something as a target, take an example of our economy. So recently I've been given an opportunity to be a deputy chairperson in a new thing from Ministry of Statistics called NCAPES, which is National Capital Accounting, into the GDP. So what's going on is basically we have lush green forest in, let's say, Bhopal, but they are not valued at all. They are zero. But if you cut that tree, you get a GDP out of it. Am I right? So what happens is that in this, because my way of judging the GDP is only through the economic activity, what I'm doing is actually I'm trying to take a toll on my environment and degrading my environment. So then again, if you make this kind of if you only measure is GDP per capita, then what will happen is that you will not have any environment, because environment is literally not making any GDP. And if any state is in competition like Punjab and Haryana, they will keep cutting their forest. Same is the case happening in case of farmers, where you will find that I'm not going to touch that, but all I'm saying is that for growing this rice, for growing 1 ton of paddy, you are using more than 60 ton of water. And that is basically, then you're trying to export. Even if you export, you are not exporting rice, you are actually exporting your fresh water at very cheap way. The only thing is because your GDP is not tied to any way to your groundwater. So now in this, what we're trying to do is we're trying to make a live data and try to value our natural resources and then incorporate, and then we can show to the farmer that look here, even though you're getting money, you're actually reducing your GDP. And that may be a way of making them understand. Never mind. So let's going further. So in this, so two things we have understood, that alone regulation will not work. Mechanically, economy cannot work. You need supervision. But for supervision, what kind of alternatives you have? So one of the alternatives I told you is the credit, like giving to third party, that you do the supervision for us. But we see that there is a problem with incentive. They cannot capture uncertainty in a better manner. So what happens that you cannot use that. Another way we have talked about is that, okay, you only define your own goals. Let me find out and try to reach those goals. But again, I just shared with you the work is that even if you have fixed your goals, those goals will get manipulated. Student can go do cheating. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is that you can always game that system. And people are doing it. And not only people, government also do the games. Now, the third point is that somebody says that, okay, then why not we do self-regulation? Self-regulation is that nobody's telling me to do anything. If I regulate myself, then there is no problem with any person who can come and tell me. But there is a problem with the self-regulation as well. What is the problem? That in case of era of, especially now in COVID, we have a lot of things which is digitalized. So all this digital data privacy and all this have become very big things. Am I right? You have your UPI payments. You don't want to get, even think about your app getting hacked, right? So now all these things are with giants like Google, Facebook and all. What they're trying to do, they're trying to sell your things. Of course, you can say that how may I, being getting affected. But in the long run, you will find out that these are the things which are best kept with your own country. That's why there is a UPI payment, so that you can at least keep your information to your country. So you don't want to have self-regulation. Google is saying actually that look here, again, this is nothing against Google. I'm just giving an example that look here, I am doing the best practices. I am the one who will take care of it. I ensure you that I will not use your data, but can you trust them? Or you will trust your government. So in this case, your self-regulation as a mean of supervision will also not work. So then what is the remedy out of it? So it looks like there is no answer for uncertainty. There's uncertainty hogi and then it will go away. So the point here is that there are few things that we can take care of that can help us in the uncertainty. So number one is our ex ante boards. So all those things like bank boards, even we have cricket boards and all, those are the one who should be very transparent. They should make some policies and they should be very transparent policies. If you have transparency in the system, bring the transparency back to, so that even a common person can see what you're doing. Take an example for a portal called GEM, which I'm sure you people might be knowing. It's the government e-market. Right now only government is doing it, but I think after some time you'll see that it will going to broaden. So what is going in the GEM? See, initially what happens is that, basically what happens is that there was some tender going on, you don't know the price. Now, even as a person like me, I can just go to GEM, I can check what's the price of this thing, what is the price they are, going to charge. So I find out, and this also in the chapter, you will find that there are prices in Amazon and in GEM, you will find that they're really close. Sometimes GEM is cheaper, sometimes, the Amazon is cheaper. So you'll find that there's a very much close transparency in that system. So you can, at least on one ground, you can say that this is something where the government is bringing some kind of transparency, and this is just a first step into that. Another thing which I want to, before I go ahead on the board system, I want to share with you, there is a problem of, there is also one case that even if you want to, like person like me, let's say I am a decision maker, I want to use my supervision, but still I am motivated to use only regulations. What I mean by that is that, I being a bureaucrat, let's say, now I have to acquire a land for some XYZ project. So what is the regulation? There is a tendering thing called L1. So L1 means the least cost. So although least cost doesn't mean that only least cost is the only criteria for your thing. There are various way it is designed, and you will find that the cost factor is only 30%. There are 70% another factor for which you will be determining the price, but those are subjective. As a decision maker, I will say, who will go to that extent? Why? Because firstly, there will be somebody who will come to me and tell me that this minimum price of this land was 1 lakh rupees. Why have you given 1,20,000? So there was a setting between you. So there is more accountability that will come with that. So I don't want to take all those things. What I will do, I will simply say L1, right? And what I will say 1 lakh rupees to you, farmer. I'm going to take your land. The farmer or anybody in the village, let's say, he will say, are you kidding me? This is the only piece of land I have, right? Market price is 2 lakh rupees. You at least give me the market price. But the regulation says in the L1 that I also has to take care of that. So what will happen eventually is that he will go to the court. Once he'll go to the court, he will say that, look here, my land is 2 lakh and government is giving me 1 lakh. Then court will obviously going to say that give him 2 lakh, and then he will give. So what is actually happening is that because of this kind of rules, which also Niti Aayog, by the way, talked about, that this has to be scrapped. Now we have to come back to the fair value. Appoint a valuer, ask them for the fair value. Now what has happened? In the first instance, if he has given 2 lakh rupees, it was case settled. But now what happens that government pays the compensations. There's a delay of the transactions. And what happens that the farmer has to, or anybody has to be, under this kind of harassment unnecessarily. And we will find that government is one of the biggest litigator because of such rules. And we just want to get rid of all these things. So these is some of the cases, even when you have a supervision power, just because to avoid accountability and, all the kind of things, you simply drift away towards the regulation. And that is one of the way why the regulation keep piling up. So the one of the way to tackle this is to have a transparency in the system, have a kind of trust in the boards. So if you have the highest top managers and you have to put in the trust into them, saying that whatever the policy we are making, this is the policy and this is the intent behind the policy. So that is very much important. Why intent is important is, again, we are living in an uncertain world. So once we are living in an uncertain world, we simply cannot go and measure the outcome as the ultimatum for judging the policy. So outcome can become good, outcome can also become bad, because there is a uncertainty issue. Okay, you may have all the good intent, but at the end somebody may cheat you. So doesn't mean that if you end up with something less means that you actually failed. No, you have not failed. Your intention has to be upfront, very transparently put in front of the economy. That is first way we have to do it. And one of the steps we have taken is to go through GEM. Other way is that to have, okay, so we will have contracts, we have a contract and something goes bad, but my intention was good. So what will I end up with? I'll end up in getting help from the legal system. I may probably, somebody will have to go to the legal system and go for completion of the contract. No contract can be complete, am I right? Because of uncertainty, you cannot write everything, all the outcomes, right? So what will happen is that if your legal system is the one which is really efficient, then it makes sense, you know, then it will complement to your ex post, ex ante board decisions. So if decision is taken in good faith, but something goes bad, take an example of again flat owners. We wanted to compensate them. We want to, you know, take care of their things as well. So we made them as financial creditors. But the financial creditor again has its own problem. So it doesn't mean that IBBI didn't do a good job. It is simply that there are some outcome. The desire was something, but the outcome became something. But doesn't mean that IBBI had some kind of bad intentions behind it. So the only problem which is left in our country for supervision is that we need to take care of our legal system. This is something that we've been keep talking about for last 3 years. In some way or another way, I have also written a chapter on this called Matsya Nyaya, where we talked about this pendency over 5.6 crore in the lower courts. And I think roughly about, I have written somewhere, 5.6 lakh in high courts is something which is the biggest problem. We are not able to enforce our contracts. That's the problem. And if we are, we may have one or two odd good judgment coming from Supreme Court, which I do not, you know, deny. But it is the ultimately the common person who is not able to access this. And we have to make sure that this kind of pendency has to go some kind of, you know, we have to have a redressal system, very efficient system, so that there is a kind of message given to the economy and to the world that India is actually working well in case of our judiciary system. If you look into the ease of doing business, you will find that our rank only stagnates because of this now. We have only moved one rank up for last 3. However, we have gone up by 40 ranks. So this is where I'll just like to close this thing, my friends, saying that you need to have simple laws. Like in our case, we are also put a very simple laws for labor laws. We have put in place. I'll give you one example. So what used to happen in case of small scale industries, there was, if you have less than 100 laborers, then you're not allowed, then there is no need to comply with labor laws. Okay. But if you have more than 100, then you have to. So what the entrepreneur used to do is, rather than trying to make his factory big to avail the scale effect, he actually used to make small factory where he is not hiring more than 100 workers, so 99 workers, and he used to move on. And neither he was getting anything out of it, neither the system is getting out of it. So this is a prime example where you will have some kind of redundant laws, which now the government has tried to relax it. We have taken care of that, and we have made it very smooth. And we're trying to do it. And so what happens is that you are trying to keep very simple laws, easy to understand, more transparency, and a very effective ex post judiciary system, legal system. And that is how you take care of the uncertainty. So I'll just close it here. And if there is any thing like we can discuss on. Thank you.
Amit sir, you had a question that you put in the chat box.
Hi, Dr. Bali. How are you?
Hi, Amiji. I'm fine. Please tell me. Kaise hain?
It's really very, like something very amazing to listen to you always. Like any point of time when I listen to you, the kind of data you put and the kind of knowledge you put, it's marvelous. So thank you so much for putting your words. One thing, the problem we say that the regulatory institutions or the boards has to be transparent. Now, the transparency involved certain inherent changes in the structure of the regulatory board itself in the very institution. Now, automatically, it will involve certain kind of incurring more cost, the regulatory compliance cost, and it will make the prices go up. Like very simple example, in IBC, any data which government is putting or anywhere in the IBBI, they are not telling you the CIRP cost. The CIRP cost is something we need to look up. It's huge. It's biggest in the world. The rough estimate which I have made in analysis. So, like, we are talking about supervision, but we have to also look for the common man, like how it is going to not put any extra burden to the masses at large. So that's it.
Yes, yes, I totally agree with you that CRP cost is been on the high side. There's no deny on that. But what I'm trying to say, take a case of GEM. So in GEM, there is just a portal, and portal doesn't cost much. And now that you will find that rather than having a hidden cost somewhere for the tender, kitna liya, kitna nahi liya, anybody at any point of time can just go to GEM and can find it out. So that is, and again, GEM is not perfect, I'm telling you. In GEM also there is something like some states have to first say that they agree to this, and then there is some kind of process which goes on. So not many states are right now part of GEM as well. And but the point here is that this is some kind of baby step which has been taken for opening up as an least cost method for this kind of transparency. But in case of CRP, I just cannot say right now because I'm not have looked into it right now.
So there's a question from Amrapali Sharma. If she wants to unmute herself and ask the question, she can.
Please. Sure.
Amrapali, if I'm audible.
Good evening, sir. Am I audible?
Hi. Yes, you are.
Thank you for this valuable lecture, sir. And I wanted to ask that, according to you, which regulatory institution in India is the most efficient in terms of its structure and working, and why? I didn't say the best because there is always room for improvement. So, which is most efficient?
See, it's not like one is best or not. The point here is that, the biggest point you will find out that none of the regulatory system works in silos. Okay, so if you have some kind of issue coming in SEBI, it may have its linkages with RBI. RBI may also have linkages with CCI, and Amit has known better than me. Like when we both used to be there, how many times RBI people used to come and interact with us, and SEBI people used to come and talk to us. The thing is that when you are in a regulation, it has to be a holistic way. So CCI has to sometime jump in. Sometime it is about, again, it's not about being the perfect system. I'm telling you. You don't want to go for perfect. That's the whole idea of this lecture. The only issue is that the person who says that I am perfect or this system can become perfect is just making fool of you. You will only going to manage maximum 80 to 85%, and let 15% be like that. I'll give you one example on that. Let's say today, let's say that there is one student in, I'm just going to take liberty of Amiji name. So Amiji is taking class, and his one student used to come sometime 5 minutes early in the class, and sometime he comes 5 minutes late in the class. And there is another student who always comes on time, every time. Now, on a given day, the guy who comes on time is not there. Will Amit be worried about him? I think he will be. He will say that this guy always to come, something must have gone wrong. But the guy who comes sometime early, sometime late, what he feel that, okay, this is normal. So you have to allow system to be this much normal. This is part of it. This much of the, then it should be up to Amit to understand that, okay, he is coming late because of something. It may be genuine thing, it may not be genuine thing. That is up to him. But after 5 or 6 trial, he will be understanding to see that whether he is actually making sense of it or not. That is what we are trying to say. In system, you just take care of only 80-85%. That's it. Don't make things for each and every case. Don't make cases for COVID, especially. So that if you take a case of IBBI, they have said that no more of extension, no more moratorium. That's it. Finish. One time settlement, okay. Not every time. Don't make this as a habit. You see, even if in Amazon there is there's a discount, okay, so you won't be buying now. You know that there will be discount eventually coming, so you'll wait for that. So then system became, you start to game the system. So the thing is that you want to make system which makes sense to you, simple, precise, take care of maximum 80-85% of the outcome. 15% leave to the supervisor, he will think over it. As you are just living in the prison. In prison, everything is predicted. This much time you will come out, this much time you will have your food and all, everything is there. Then life is very boring. Just having this uncertainty in your life makes your life interesting. And same is the case with your stock market. If you know that stock market today goes up, but sometimes comes down, sometimes, then you will not worry about your stock markets. The only thing which we freak out is that we only want to see him rise, and that's a problem. Same is case with the kids. Sometimes the kids behave good, sometimes kids behave bad. But if you think it that, okay, sometimes he may be not because of me, but maybe he has some kind of issue at his home. Sometimes he may be having his fight with his best friend. Sometimes today is just not in the case. Then you will understand that, this much you have to allow the teacher. If the head authority tells teacher every time that even if one person is late by 1 minute, you don't have to listen and simply get him out of the class, then it makes no sense. So all the regulators should do their work reasonably good. If there's something extraordinary, something coming up, you work on it. And this is not something which I'm saying. I'll give you one example. This is something which is also been a main problem in G20 summits. So in the G20 summit, European countries have told that we have done with so many regulations now, we should go and start looking for better supervision. It's not about regulations now. Okay, regulation तो बहुत बना ली, सिस्टम को इतना हमने इतना stringent कर दिया है कि अब normal person, there's a thing that people of the, actually what happens that even the big companies actually have lawyers, they have the ability to hire those lawyers and all these things. They pay something like 5% of the cost just to compliance. But look at the person who is at having a very small shop. उसका तो जीएसटी में सर्वर डाउन हो जाए तो ही इज इनटू सो मेरे को इतने सारे मिलते हैं कि सर दिस वाज द लास्ट डेट, वी वर सबमिटिंग, सर्वर क्रैश, वी डिडंट गिव इट, अब 5 लाख रुपए का फाइन आ गया. सो देन यू कैन नॉट से कि भाई नहीं आपने तो लेट कर दिया तो हो गया, because the server problem is something which is beyond government hand. It's a part of uncertainty. Even before your lecture there was some wedding going on outside, there was so much noise, and this is also part of your uncertainty. So you have to allow all this. So don't go for anything perfect regulation, just go with reasonable. By the way, my answer will be SEBI. If you're looking to that, SEBI is like, I think they are very efficient. अभी भी कुछ दिन पहले उन्होंने एनएससी को 1 करोड़ का फाइन लगाया. You can read about that. So it's not about like fine is again a proxy for their efficiency. The only thing is that I feel the manner in which our stock market today have gone to 50,000, and thinking that our GDP back then was minus 22 and so every people was making hue and cry. I think this is phenomenal thing. Nobody could have expected this as well. So how you will give an example that petrol prices can come to negative, your stock market can go to 50,000 plus. You just can't do anything. This is just a part of uncertainty, and you enjoy this while you go with that. I hope that replies you, Amrapali.
Yeah.
There's a question.
Okay.
There's a question by Ankit Srivastav. I'll request him to unmute himself and ask the question.
Good evening, sir. This is Ankit. Thank you for your very, enlightening lecture here. So my question relates to ease of doing business, which you've also covered in your chapter, quite a fair bit, sir. My question is that how does ease of doing business index rankings, in which India has leapfrogged over the years and shows signs of constant improvement, has an actual effect on at the ground level, right, where the institutional framework is so weak in certain places, right? How does it reach the tier 2, tier 3 cities, the businesses over there, and what overall effect does it have on the growth of the country economically? Because we're obviously in a pretty slow phase right now because of COVID and all, but ease of doing business index rankings have, always been in our favor. So what are the practical implications of this ranking?
Okay, firstly, we are not doing slow. We are among the fastest recovery. We have a V-turn, and that's the front page of our economic survey. So we are not doing anything slow. The only thing which was slow was earlier, and that was very, very well thought of strategy. I'll tell you one more thing on this before I'll just answer your question. So basically, what happens is that the way the government has approached this COVID is by following. So what happens in February and March, there was some kind of news that something happened in Wuhan, right? Some kind of significant thing has happened and it's not good. We had absolutely no idea about this disease. Like what is this disease? What's the nature of disease? How deadly this is and all, we have no idea, right? So what you will do, or what I will do is, this is something in economics which is called barbell strategy. It's called dumbbell ko barbell bolte hain, so it's a barbell strategy. But in the simple way, I'll tell you that this is called hedging for the worst. So what we did is, back in the day, some people were telling us that, this is a sitting time bomb. They have no health sector, and all those things were coming. I mean, there were so many articles you can read on how they were bashing India. The thing is that we had gone for a Babur strategy, total close down of everything, because we had no knowledge, right? And once you have no knowledge of your opponent, the best thing to do is that just don't even think about trying to fight with him, right? And then what happens around about June, July, we start getting some kind of information that, okay, this is a contagious disease. It's very deadly for people who are old or especially young, but it's not as deadly as we were thinking initially. I'm not saying that it's not at all deadly, but the death rate as compared to SARS and other things was a little bit less. So what we did, we strategically slowly start opening up. What other thing we have also done is that we have not given any helicopter money, which all the economists were telling us. US, UK, everybody is giving us the gyan that helicopter money de dijiye, ghar baithe hain, paise le lein. We did say no. The government was very much into it that you have to earn your money. But what we will do is, for the very fragile people, we will give you free food. And they have been giving till November. And this was one of the biggest free fund arrangement for people which was done. Now, I have also worked on the national infrastructure pipeline, which was basically direct from Modi ji, and this was given to us. We were basically working with Invest India, and I with them were working, and we try to highlight which are the most important infrastructure projects with us, and why are they getting late. And so that straight away go to the top boss, that this is the people who are working, this is the stage, these are the problems, and you say what you want to do. Immediately the work starts. The work starts, people are hired, people are getting wages, and from their wages they start spending the money, and that's how the multiplier slowly starts working. And as we see that we are starting getting now, even we got the vaccines, we are gifting the vaccine, only country in the world, because it's in our DNA to help. We are doing it irrespective of whatever they are saying to us right now. And then we are overall slowly opening up. I'm still saying that there might be one more last wave which we have to take care of, but I think our vaccine is going to take care of that, and after that we can claim our victory. But what is going on here is that now slowly as the economy is growing, we are getting a very sharp rise in the GDP, right? So it's not like we are growing slow. We were going slow, but yes, that was necessary because we had no information, and I think loss of people life cannot be compensated with any amount of money. So that's one thing. So other thing which you have asked me is about basically saying that how the ease of doing business is giving us the good results, whereas you feel that this is it's not that much for the thing. So I don't know how you have arrived to that. If you can tell me later on, maybe that will be fine, but I'll tell you how ease of doing is done. Basically, there's a proper methodology which has been adopted, and it is across all the countries. So you will find that in case of procuring the electricity, for example, there's a one key part is electricity and infrastructure. You will find that what kind of infrastructure we are having now. You will find that we have 100% electricity, we have 100% LPG coverage, we have 100% toilets. Toilets will not be part of EOW. I'm just saying that with you. So what we have is basically infrastructure, roads, electricity requirements, all these things are there. They have actually improved. And if you want to see, the data is also there in the volume 2. So don't buy my words, and you should not be actually buying my words, because we are Eastern philosophical teachers, where we let the student find out its own self. We are not the Western people which basically give you all the material and discourage you from your own creativity. Okay, so that is one thing. The only thing which holds back is the judiciary, the contract enforcement. Basically, that has just gone by one rank in last 5 years, whereas our overall rank has increased very much. So and then we also have, there is a one small component of capital and finance. We have worked on that. Our if you want, I can tell you that before the COVID and 1 year before that, before the liquidity crisis come to India from L&T, we were one of the highest growing for phenomenal time. I don't have a graph to show you right now, but you can look into the survey first chapter. So that graph was very high. The GDP was at 8+ rate. And not only that, we had the lowest inflation ever, less than even 2% that time. And that was also stagnant. It was not like going up and down, something like that. It was very, so your overall net GDP was high. We also presented a case that when your GDP is high, inflation is low, then your interest rate should also come down. And interest rate will still going to come down, so that the cost of capital to the entrepreneur should stay low and more people should come up with their startups. So those are all the vision which we had in our thing. But you should look to the chapter 1, and then you should make your own decision. And if you have any discrepancy or you have any more questions to ask me, you can always reach me, or maybe you can ask Amit. I mean, he can also help you out.
So
Sir, I have
thank you so
received
much. I'm sorry if you felt that I was,
No.
misinformingly
See, yes.
questioning the
Please.
ranking.
No. I'm no one to discourage you. No one to say. I'm just here to give you I'm like a
Yes,
signboard
yes.
to you. Okay. When you go and enter the campus, it says left hand side is the auditorium, right side is this. I am just that thing.
Of course, sir.
Okay, I'm
So,
just a thing. You take it, you apply your mind, and then you find out. I mean, nobody should tell you what to say, what not to say. You should be just free to say whatever you want to say. Whatever you feel, you should say. As there is
yes,
no
sir. I was only talking about the index rankings in terms of the corresponding institutional structures we have in India. As you pointed out, the enforcement of contracts and all, they lag a bit. So I was only wondering whether infrastructure or other things might improve our rankings and, help our businesses in India in tier 2, tier 3 cities.
You tell me how many train crashes has happened. Now, I'm not again talking from my from BJP point of view. I'm just saying, since 2014, you find out how many train crashes are there, how many railway stations you find there is littering, how many buses are working, how many bumps you get on the road when you are going on the bus, how many dedicated fare corridor, more than 600 kilometers. Abhi 3 din pehle in Rajya Sabha, Modi ji has said this, that we have worked on all those infrastructure things. We have worked on this. I can tell you 40,000 crore rupees worth of infrastructure. I am looking into it. 50 projects, top 50 projects of country. I am telling you from my end. I can share you once this get open. I can share the document also with you. That's not a problem. We are working on that golden quadrangle. You know why we are working on the golden quadrangle? Do you know that? It is simple, very simple thing. In the Commonwealth, when it happened in China, 2009. You know what? China had an immense demand for steel and coal. We had that. But there were no roads onto that. Can you believe this? No roads just to get our steel to the Mumbai port or West Bengal port. Vishakhapatnam, sorry. Nothing was there. So they said that to hell with this, what kind of country we are living in after 78, we can't even just create this. How you create the corridors? You know that. How we have done it and how China has done it. China has used a fishing village. Okay, Shanigan was a fishing village. It's a poor village. And they turned it into a special economic zone, which is even very big. What we did in our country is made so many small special economic zones. So small that it doesn't get to any scale effect. So we have so many small economic zones, and we were the first country in Asia to make special economic zones. Can you believe this? And we did it in the worst way. So now what we are saying is that to close all this thing and make one place which is bigger enough so that all the things can work over there. Now you see our manufacturing, Samsung has put the plant, Noida mein ban raha hai, Film City is coming here. So there is a lot of things that they are trying to work on. Okay, it's not like something that, it has to be only a development in this or in that. No. And if you have any kind of suggestion ki this is getting lost or this is getting ignored, bring it to us. This government, I'm telling you, this listens. The only problem is that the people are not able to reach to them. I am there. If for whatever I can do, I can just go and share your vision with them. That's not a problem. They are not at all afraid of listening to anyone. There are two ways to do work, and this is something which I learned from Sahuji, and just re-quoting him. He said that there are two ways to do work. One is to make a perfect plan, and then after you make a perfect plan, then you go and implement in the economy, which will never work. As I just shared with you, there is always an element of uncertainty. You cannot predict, and I cannot predict. So it cannot work like that. The other thing is that you make a decent, reasonable plan with a transparent vision, and then you let it to the market, get the feedback from the market, and accordingly keep tweaking it. And you have to tweak it forever, because the markets are alive. They respond like humans. They are living beings. Cities are also living beings. So it's like that.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. That shed a lot of
Sir,
light on what you were trying to say. Also, sir, if you find the time at the end, could you please also just talk about the Thalinomics chapter in the survey? It seems
That
pretty
was a
interesting to me, but I haven't been able to read.
okay, that was not that popular thing, but sure, I can do that. That was in 2019, I guess.
Sir, we have a few more questions and then we can sum it
Yeah,
up.
yeah, sure.
Sir, I have received a question on chat, sir, from Diksha Bhatt from third year. She says, Sir talked about the credit rating and how they cannot be a comprehensive judge of an economy's overall development and growth outlook. Similarly, for example, Indian stock market valuations have gone up and can hardly be considered as an indicator of economic stability. So, what, in your opinion, could be some of the factors that could be a real indicator of whether or not the economy is looking printed situation like a pandemic?
Okay, I just shared with you that there cannot be any measure for that. Because if once you make the measure, all your effort goes to enhance that measure and you forget all the other aspects. You know, when you talk about a successful economy, what do you think of? Do you think about as a GDP? Do you think about per capita income? Do you think about environment? I think it's everything. So if you put your focus on one thing, you basically going to make other thing worse. Okay, what I will suggest you is that go for live data, that there should be a reasonable, let's say, growth. I think growth rate is the one of the simplest way to understand anything, right? Go and just like I was giving an example of the dog and the frisbee. The dog never knew that where the frisbee will eventually end up. What he do, he keep looking at the frisbee, and if he go left, he go left, he go right, he go right, right? Same way, you look at the live data and how the live data is performing. If the live data is going as per what you thought initially, for example, I say that, you know, there was one of the thing, I'll just share it with you, is basically there was a thinking somewhere around that that when the GDP is going down, okay, so what they were saying is you obviously have some kind of fiscal deficit, and you also have some kind of interest payments. So when you are paying interest to the abroad people where you have taken money from, so that is, let's say, 100 rupees. So what these people say that, look here, now earlier, let's say our GDP was 1000 rupees and we are paying 100 rupees. Okay, so that make 10%. Now the GDP has gone down, let's say from 1000 it come down to 200. Okay, so now how much you're paying interest? 10, 100. So that becomes 50%. So this interest payment to GDP ratio was rising, will rise as your GDP falls, because you are paying, जब कमाओगे तभी तो खर्चा करोगे. That simple thing in your home. If I take a loan from bank, I'll do the same thing. If I earn more, then I pay my interest payment. So there was some person who said that, look here, we should reduce we should pay our loans so that the interest payment can be reduced. Okay, but what we say that no, this is wrong. Let this be high. Let the interest to GDP ratio keep be high. No problem. We will pay. Actually, as your GDP interest to GDP ratio gets higher, it means, let's say it is from 5% goes to 6%. So that means that out of every 100 rupees earned in India, we are paying 6 rupees now as the interest. So as this was going high, somebody said that let's pay the some thoda bahut loan de dete hain, so the interest payment should come down. He said no, once you will do this, your foreign exchange will go down, number one. Number two, your ability to earn will also go down, because now today you are spending some money, so that will increase some people, it will become somebody's income. Like in case of infrastructure, if some people are working, 500 people are employed to make a bridge, those 500 people will earn some money. Let's say government has bought that money from outside and then made a bridge, because government don't have money. So that will give more income generation. From that higher income generation, you can pay back the interest anytime in the long run. But if you don't make this bridge today, thinking that, you know, we have to pay loan tomorrow, what will you are doing? You are actually crippling your economy, and you are making your people to go into poverty spiral. So that we don't want. So in this, what I'm saying is that you always look into the live data. Always. You look into the data, whichever thing you like, you feel investments are good. I think that's the best way to see private investment, not government investment. It's very funny when we always look at private people for growth, and once we are doing disinvestment, we say that government should do it, don't do it, and all. That's very, very different things, two different things. So what you do, you just look at the live data. Look at the live data. How I'm saying that judiciary is can be improved even further, and why we're writing for 3 years is because the data is saying that. Go to the NDJG website. You will find how many pendencies there. If there is a pendency, it means that there is a lot of clogging of the system. How you want to declog the system is up to us. We can hire new judges. We can make some kind of automatic systems. All these things we have to thought about. So once you see the growth rate is not behaving in the manner, like in case of COVID, if you say the growth rate is going down, obviously it is going down. इसमें क्या सोचने वाली बात है? ये तो every world, सब country के साथ यही हो रहा है. The problem is that once you open your economy, now again you want to close the economy, like it's happening in UK. They have a permanent lockdown. Canada had a permanent lockdown. USA is thinking of that, right? That means एक time they're opening, then they're closing. There is no symmetry in that work. What we have done is very symmetrical. We have said, okay, we are closing down. Simple. घर बैठो जिंदा रहो. But obviously then it obviously means that the GDP will be down. But once we are opening very, very smartly. We are opening some sectors first, then looking into it, then we open metros, then we look into it, then we open, trains. So this is a way of systematically arranging your system. And this is something which we have done it very, very successfully. No other country has done it like that. Only the 2-3 countries which have done better than us, but not much. So just look at the live data of the economy, whatever you feel like. And you, as per your vision, if you say government vision is that we want to achieve 8% growth rate, but we don't want to see that the particular section of the economy should not get hurt. Particular MSMEs, are facing on a phase 1. So they change the definition of MSME this time. The RBI has taken so many things on that. Of course, again, I'm not saying everything is done. There is always scope of doing better, but the intention, you have to look into it. So if you want to improve your economy, look into the intention of what your intention is and look at the data. If the data is behaving in that way, then it is fine. If not, then how you can tweak the data. That is what you have to do. And again, for that, you need to have trust in your bank boards. You have to trust in your boards, and then you have to have an efficient judiciary system. So people know that even if today I'm not able to deliver this contract, the judicial system will take care of it because they will understand my problem. It should not be that they are stuck in the system for 5-6 years. That kind of transparency, and this is something which is there in, you can look into how Singapore works. Singapore is number 1 in this, by the way. Singapore basically has, I think, less than, 7 days voluntary liquidation. I think they have, I don't want to say what, but they are less than 50 days. We are at 1500 days. So we have to see all those things. I hope that makes sense. Okay.
We have 3 brief questions. We can take it up, sir, and you can answer them briefly, and then we can wind up.
Okay.
Sir, first question is by Abhinav Tyagi. Abhinav, please unmute yourself and ask the question.
Good evening, sir.
Hi.
So while I was researching with respect to one of the topics with regard to SEBI's power to carry out search and seizure, I got to know that the very power given to the regulatory institution is too wide, and such powers have not been given to any other institution or regulatory institution. So my question is, at times
other means other countries.
No, sir, other regulatory institutions such as TRAI.
Okay.
Now, when coming to the power of SEBI, of course, it is needed to carry out the objectives to protect the interest of investors. But sir, don't you think at times it so happens that such power to carry out seizure specifically and search at the same time, it eventually affects the right to privacy of an individual? When, for example, the WhatsApp leak case that happened in 2017 or 18, I guess, where the mobile phones were seized and WhatsApp chats were eventually used as a source to eventually find them. So it infringes the very right to privacy of an individual, and giving more and more power. And SEBI is now also asking for more and more power from the government with regard to carry out its objectives.
See, I think again I'm saying that as the stock markets and all these things, we are actually one of the countries where we don't have still debt market been fully functioning. we are underdeveloped as far as, so that's why the main of the loans are also taken from banks for development, that is basically PSU banks. The other countries basically goes to the debt market for all these things. We don't have that. So we are right now not, I think we are basically going towards it. We have done a lot of work on putting this corporate debt market, bond markets. Abhi aap dekhenge mutual funds वगैरह सब आ गए हैं. So they all pose some kind of new challenges. For example, take a case of Paytm wallets and all. I don't know if you must be knowing already. So there was one of my friend who actually used to use his credit card to get money in the Paytm wallet. So next month he has to pay that Paytm because the credit card se liye. For that he has another credit card. So usse he will take the Paytm se and then he will pay off that. So he was doing all this thing. He was buying a lot of gold. So obviously he is like even younger to me. So he was doing it mostly. I mean, you guys are very smart. So aise over the time, what happens that again this same thing happens. Sometimes somewhere around they get to know that okay, this is a loophole. So they will say that okay, I say wallet will jo kharidega, they will have to pay some money, right? So in that way, there is new regulation which came up. Same way, what SEBI has done is that actually there are so many kind of problems have come in the past. So they have also gone to that. I think where the regulation has gone up and up. But I think they are very much into it. They are very rational organization, and I feel that if there is anything such kind of things are there where you feel that WhatsApp and all these things, I'm not aware of those things, but I think to some extent we have to see that these things are kind of transitionary, and over the time I think SEBI will have its own way of functioning. I just can say that to you. So initially what they are basically in a phase of transition where the stock markets and corporate bond market are on the way of development. So these things are bound to be there. But as we have already said in the chapter that we don't want to have too many regulations where the particular person fit. For example, I'll give you one example. There are some kind of take an example of KYC. So if you're doing a KYC for mutual fund and also doing for what we say trading in the stock market, you have to do same KYC, but you have to do it twice. So that was one of the things which came to us that SEBI should remove those things and just take one ek Aadhaar card hai, ek bari KYC ho gaya to ho gaya. So they have listened to that. So they're gonna streamline that. So it's like again tweaking and fixing over the time. I think it will become smooth. That's not a big problem.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
So we have a question from Kartikeya Bansal. So.
Okay.
Good evening, sir. Thank you for this enlightening talk. So my question relates to how you highlighted that to navigate uncertainties, we need changes in supervision, and that comes with increasing transparency and good intent. In that situation, how does bringing in more private players or more and more privatization get us to that end? Because we know that will eventually lead to a loss in transparency, as well as the intent of private sectors not as pure as that of the government for the welfare of the people. So how do we balance these two situations?
You think that government is more transparent?
Sir, if the government it is elected by the people and has the intent of the government can always be questioned by the people, and they have some sort of accountability.
No, you can also intend the question of the private. See, basic thing is like this. Take an example of BSNL. These are like almost dead now, but they have a lot of assets with them. So by asset monetization, you can make this. But at one time, you were getting the buyers for this. You have to see that, the government initially, what we have to think was that government is going to do all the things for you, which is correct. It should do. But wherever there is demand for it, where the people are capable of it, then it should be also given to them. The last time which we did the privatization, is basically of the same idea. Now, I'll tell you one problem of regulation in this as well. Basically, hota kya hai? I'll tell you the problem with there is a thing called hinge bias. Now, what is that hinge bias? I'll tell you. So, the problem is that why people don't privatize. I'll tell you first that. So, what happens? The decision maker today says that let's do privatization for something for railways. Let's say last year kiya tha humne IPO nikala tha. So, what happens with the IPO of railways? Actually, And nobody knows what is the actual worth of railways because it's not listed. Until unless you list a company, you don't actually know the worth of the company. Okay, so हमने निकाला शेयर, so हमने बोला कि okay, let's have this share for 100 rupees. But when they got to subscription, you will find that most of the time, I'm not saying every time, most of the time you'll find that these are oversubscribed and they are also sold at premium. For example, this 100 rupees may be available at 700 rupees, and at the same time they are subscribed by 350 times. What does this mean? It means that there are so many people who are willing to buy this. People are interested in having the railways with them because it's a very, very good asset. It's making money for whatever business is earning, doing excellent. The problem is that, you know, once you do this kind of activity, and not only for PSUs, by the way, is even for the private, take a case of Burger King. The Burger King in December has gone for IPO. They were also oversubscribed by 8 or 9 times. Am I right? And they were also selling their thing. The closing price was really, I think 88% higher. What is the point I want to say? Even the private company don't know exactly what is the valuation of their particular stake. And same is a problem with the government side. So government also know what is the exact problem. The exact valuation of your stock. So what happens is that now let's say I am the decision maker. मैंने बोला कि चलो कर दो और 100 रुपए पे करके दे दो, IPO बनाते हैं. So what happens is that it got oversubscribed 350 times. So then what will be the narrative? Narrative will be, अरे देखो, this guy has sold him for a penny. ये तो मुफ्त में दे दिया, इसने तो किसी को he must be having some friends like, you know, big entrepreneurs, and he has just sold it like that. But the problem is same with the private organization, that when they do it, they also feel that their shares also get oversubscribed, sometimes undersubscribed as well. So point here is that there is no way to find which price and how much will be the demand for your IPOs. So this is also very uncertain. But if I am the Babu, I am the bureaucrat, what I will be, I'll be always be having this kind of issue. Why should I take all this headache of doing privatization? Because at the end, somebody will come and tell me why you do it at this particular price. Why not you increase the price? Because the railway share is at 700 rupees. Why you have done it at 100 rupees or 200 rupees? So to avoid this kind of questions, they will not go for privatization. The government people are always reluctant to do a privatization. That's what I'm telling you, basically. The privatization, here what happens that he as a person will know that once this IPO goes out, no matter what price is set, it will most probably will be very, very highly accepted. And then the allegation will come down to that guy who has agreed, who has signed on the file saying that today hum privatization karenge. That look here, this guy being from XYZ party has given to his friends all these shares. So this is the reason why, and this is the typical reason why at one time we had VSNL and BSNL buyers. And that was a very good plan that was working very well. And that was the right time to sell it, because when the valuation is the highest, you should use it to your advantage. You know that just by doing 5% of disinvestment, I have done the work. The passive FDI which can come to our country is beyond $5 billion. You know how much money is that and how much wonders it can do for our 5 trillion economy? Now the question which somebody will say that, okay, fine, but you are also losing some kind of say in your enterprise, and what happens with that? So the answer was given by CEA on this. He said that everybody in our home has a chula, has a gas. Everybody knows gas is very dangerous, but if you know how to, you know, use it in a particular way, okay, then it actually serves you well. So it's not like government totally want to disinvest in everything. The only thing is that we are doing it because for 70 years, they have not served the purpose. Okay, they have only lead to bureaucracy. Tell me now, it was in the speech. It was in the speech. Who is heading the Ministry of Railways? Somebody will be IS. Who is doing the same for, let's say, transportation? Again, IS. He said that why these people have to have all, why do you think the person who will be good in transport will be also good in other ministries? No, they have some kind of restricted. Even if you talk about economics, maybe I'll be able to say something sense to you. But if you ask me talk about Sachin Tendulkar, he might be good at batting, but he might be a worst cook in the world. So why should these guys should have all those kind of preferences? Why should they be the one who should run our country every time? It should be between you. If you are good, if you are best in law, you should be heading the ministry of this one. So the point is that in case of this, what you want is that you want to find appropriate buyer. Same is the case happened with the Air India, where they were earlier getting some kind of buyer, now they don't get the buyer. So we always get late in actually doing privatization. It is not the case otherwise. I'm telling you, our assets like SBI, okay, SBI is listed. There is some kind of free float which is called foreign free float. Because our float is so less, because of these promoters eating up the shares, government sitting on it like 61% doing nothing. But if the same share is gone, we can earn so much money out of it. So basically, most of our biggest corporations don't get even listed on the passive investment is simply because we have so much promoter hold on it. And by doing it, we are actually restricting the growth, and we are also restricting our corporation to become world biggest corporations. And look at Facebook, look at Google, how many people they employ, how many people they are giving employment, how much revenue they generate. We could have generated more than that. We are the 5th largest economy, maybe 6th now. But how many top 100 out of top 100 corporations, how many corporations are there in this in the world? Do you know that? Only one, SBI, 65th rank. The issue is that countries like Switzerland has 5 banks in that. Country like China has more than 20 companies in top 100 corporations. The only thing is that because we have been having this kind of notion that we have to, we cannot grow because we have to do this and we cannot go and do float our things in abroad. This will be risky and all. It's nothing is risky. You see, when there is a small problem in US bond market, immediately the FDI in India falls down. So no matter what you do, eventually you are linked, right? So in this way, what I'm saying is that privatization, actually government, even if it wants to, it cannot do it because of this kind of too many rules and regulations into the picture, and nobody want to take that accountability that we are the one who has done it. Take in case of Hindustan Zinc, which was privatized in small stake was done in 2004 or I think 5. Today it is more than 180 times the value. Okay, so now anybody can say that, oh, ye to free mein de diya usko. They can say it, but the point is that till the time you value it, you list it, you don't know it. And that's why it's important to do a little bit of strategically. You have to do disinvestment. You don't have to do it at just for sake of doing it. It actually means a lot. It brings a lot of good name and it brings a lot of employment and value generation. And that's how you're gonna do the employment generation in country.
Thank you so much, sir. There was a question related to disinvestment and privatization. You have already dealt with.
Yeah.
Up the talk, sir. Sir, I'll request Raka ma'am to give her concluding remarks, and then I'll request Amit Pratap sir to deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Nikunj. I think I would like to first congratulate Naveen for giving such a kind of, wonderful presentation. Because there was a lot of shades of simplicity as it was sounding, but it was very, complicated. Because we know that we do have a kind of perception about ourselves and, the way our economy works. And as, the students have asked questions which are very, very, coming from the sources, which are having some stereotypical kind of interpretation and understanding about the system. And we know that the kind of leadership which is working in the universe in this country is very much understanding the nuances of economy. We know about it because 80 crore people they could feed, because they were knowing about that how to deal with, as you said, till November they were feeding them. So this was a huge success, and without giving some visible gain to the economy. One thing that I would like to just wonder about the thing of the regulations, because this is very important part. I think regulations are important. Everybody knows about it, because otherwise people will be having their own ways and will be going into different direction, and we will not be reaching anywhere. So regulation is important, that we know. The only thing that I do wonder is that, as you also mentioned in your presentation quite beautifully, that it must be having some shock absorbing, and some kind of openness, when there is some shock is coming, so we can actually, imbibe that. And secondly, we can also, take care of that, meaning we can relax regulations, because I think Nipunj will understand it better. We are quite flexible as far as a number of things when they come, we take a lot of decisions on the spot. So this is something I think is also happening in India. So you have very beautifully, summed it up, because we know that we have been the beneficiary of the FDI, which has come to India, immensely. People are not knowing about it, that how actually we have enriched our economy, because we are having, the accepted views, generally the views which are in the domain, and not many people are not talking about. And our students are, I think, hardly will be, following what is being said in the parliament. So, many a time, this is quite important to follow what the leadership is saying. So I think it was a wonderful presentation, and this is what, because as I say that regulations are important, and some absorption, must be done about that. So absorbers must be there. So thank you, Naveen. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Rakesh. Thank you for your time, guys. Have a nice day.
Beta, may I ask you 1 minute?
Yes. Yes, Amit sir, if you can unmute yourself and give the vote of thanks.
Sorry, I sincerely put my gratitude to Professor Dr. Raka Arya for putting her valuable time with us, and we really appreciate, ma'am, the kind of knowledge you have put along with Dr. Bali to us, and we really put our gratitude. And Dr. Bali is our good friend. Always he put his word of wisdom, and because he has that primary working hand on that very data, he have worked. So whenever he talks, he brings a lot of expertise from the background, and that is really very valuable for to me as well, to the students, and to all of us. So I place my sincere gratitude to Dr. Naveen Bali sir. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. And please, always be with us whenever we call, because we need our help in many ways. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Amit, for kind words. I think, yeah. So yes, I'm just saying that Amit, someone is really, he knows me very well, and we have worked together. And it will be always privileged to be at your service and trying to help kids any way I can possible. So I'm always there. Okay, thanks.
Thank you so much, sir. That was one of the best lectures we had this year, sir, on economics. Probably someone has unmuted. Okay, so this was one of the best lectures that we had on economic scenario of our nation. Sir, thank you so much. Students have enjoyed this lecture a lot. They had lots of questions, pertinent questions to ask to you, sir. Thank you so much. We'll be looking forward to host you again on a bigger platform where we call other speakers also to some physical events, sir. This is yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I would also like to thank Mr. Bali for his invaluable words, and thank you Student Bar Association for organizing such a good webinar, and we are also looking forward to
I think got disconnected. So sir, we'll sum it up and we'll close down the lectures.
Sure.
Thank
you so much.
Thanks to everyone.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Thank you so much, Raka ma'am. Amit sir.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am.